The other part of this, which is actually a big scandal that gets exposed in this film, is how academia and the mainstream media have been corrupted directly. We have an Air Force counterintelligence officer who, for 9 years, worked exclusively on this issue out of Kirtland Air Force Base and other facilities in Nellis, so-called Area 51, who admits to carrying bags of cash to mainstream media figures to get their cooperation and silence or change stories. We have a CIA document from 1991 that also admits to this. We have a constitutional attorney who was involved in the Pentagon Papers during the Vietnam War, who saw documentation that at that time there were 42 major reporters and editors and national security editors in the major media in the United States and around the world that were also on the payroll of CIA to alter stories. So this is not a conspiracy theory. These are firsthand people talking about this, right, so that the public will understand that our democracy and our freedoms have been run amok and trampled under this extraordinary secrecy. But people have to understand the lengths that have been taken to maintain this secrecy, and the level of corruption is mind-blowing.
Well, this is, and you bring up the best point of all when it comes to mainstream media. When we had our mass sighting, right, and here I am, I'm a member of the media, right, and somebody that speaks to an awful lot of people every single night of the week. And I'm out there, sure, and Rita and I walked away, and my comment to Rita as we were tripping, I said to her, you know, if we had Wolf Blitzer up here right now, Wolf Blitzer, and he was standing here and he saw what we saw, do you think this? I'm serious. I really said this to Rita, Stephen. I said, do you think he would go on the news, he'd go on CNN and talk about this? And
he wouldn't be allowed to.
Right.
No. No.
Now what? Okay. Now what about you? What if you had Wolf out at one of your events, and one of those things happened out there? Do you think he would do that for you? He just wouldn't, would he?
Well, I don't think he would be allowed to. Here you have to understand the difference between the anchors and the people who read teleprompter, and the national security editors and the people who actually control what is put on in any given news cycle. People think that, you know, someone like Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, or let's go back a few years. You remember a guy named Dan Rather?
Of course.
CBS News.
I'm not that young.
Well, they had a show called 48 Hours, and it was a news magazine. Dan Rather sent his top reporters with me down to a remote area in Mexico, where a massive ET craft lifted up out of a volcano, Popocatépetl. It was filmed with the best cameras in the world. The anchor came running towards me in a state of shock and said, anyone who sees this will know this is real, this is unbelievable. By the time 48 Hours got hold of it, they had the footage. I didn't. But I had a written agreement with Kathleen Kennedy, the producer, one of the producers at 48 Hours at CBS, that any footage they shot, they would share with us unedited. They refused to do so. By the time they did the episode, they zoomed in on a normal airplane with landing lights on it to replace this massive, triangular, huge craft that had been seen by many people around this volcano in Mexico. And they completely deceived and misinformed the public. When I demanded that they hand over to us, per our written signed agreement, that footage, I was told, and I am quoting, we're CBS, and I think at that time was owned by Westinghouse, a big defense contractor,
right?
And we're going to do what we want to do. And Dr. Greer, you don't have enough billions of dollars to outlast us in court and go jump in the lake. That literally, I am telling you the God's truth.
Wow.
So the kind of corruption in the big mainstream media is breathtaking. And this is why, with the internet and with shows like yours and with all kinds of other iTunes and what have you, millions and hundreds of millions of people can now find out the truth, and we can just bypass the old corrupt big media. But it means we have to be very organized and very creative using the new media, the internet, the social media, and all these other platforms, which is what we're doing with this film. Now, that story I just told you, I can tell you 10 exactly like that from CNN, from ABC, from various other networks around the world. And I think that most people would think, well, that can't be true. This is America. We have press freedoms. We have a democracy. We have the freedom of the press, to which I say, yeah, that and other fairy tales. And so I think that people have to understand how serious this is.
Right.
Because there's such a widespread corruption that it threatens our way of life. This is exactly what Eisenhower warned about when he talked about the military-industrial complex and secrecy in these programs becoming a threat to our way of life and our democracy. This is what he was talking about. And Senator Inouye of Hawaii, in open testimony on the Senate floor years ago, said there exists a secret government with its own Air Force, its own funding mechanism, its own Navy, etc., that's above the law and free from the law itself. I'm closely paraphrasing. So all of this is going to be in this documentary. So anyone who is objective, who looks at it, will go, wow, this is it. Everything you need to know. And then the book has about 10 times more information, because a written book can have a lot more information than a documentary, although it doesn't have the film.
Right.
And the book, Unacknowledged, is chock full of amazing material in transcripts and testimony and government documents and all of this. So our objective with this is to really advance disclosure, but also to put this out in a way that isn't just in the echo chamber of the UFO subculture, but crosses over into the mainstream, so that people who, even if they're very, very skeptical, will look at this and go, oh, there must be something here. This is very convincing evidence and firsthand testimony. There's not a single person in this film that's not an aerospace industry or CIA or Air Force or military or government official, retired or current, whose testimony and information is in this film. None of it is from just, people who might have had a sighting incidentally. Because what we feel we needed to do with this, which is what we did with the Disclosure Project for the last 15 to 20 years, is put in front of the public highly credible people who, from various walks of life and various generations, spanning 50, 60 years, who have the same kind of information that corroborates the facts and corroborates the evidence, but more importantly goes more in depth into how this is structured. How are these unacknowledged special access projects structured and funded, and also why in God's name are they keeping all this secret? And that's the $64 trillion question. Actually, it's a $1,000 trillion question, because it involves the issue of replacing the entire industrial functioning operating system of our planet away from what we're currently using into a zero-point free energy society.
Right.
But that issue gets addressed. But there's another, I think, in a way, more frightening issue that gets addressed. And it's a very telling moment in this film when this Air Force counterintelligence officer, because I knew the correct language, military language to use, and I said, have you been read into, which means briefed, on the false indications and warnings program, or deceptive indications and warnings program, which is what the pop culture would call a false flag operation? And he stopped. He says, yes. And he confirms, but he says, that is so secret, I can't talk about it. But the moment, and when you see this film, Unacknowledged, when you see the expression on his face and the fact that he acknowledges that that's the case. So one of the big cards they want to play going down the road here in the next, we don't know, months, years, is they want to hoax a threat from outer space to unite the world around a military operation, kind of like the movie Independence Day. And this is, I learned about this in 1994. And most people in the UFO subculture don't believe it. They can't believe that's true. And we actually go into this movie and ask these officials, what about some of the encounters that have happened? And this intelligence officer confirms that they have hoaxed abductions, mutilations, that there have been test aircraft that are man-made that have crashed, that they made to look like it was ET when it wasn't because of liability issues. This is a very deep issue. So when people see what's in this film and what's in the book, it's going to be, I think, a shock to almost everyone who's ever had a curiosity about the subject.
I need to take a break right here. So we've got 60 seconds. So you can actually answer this almost with a yes or no answer. But with that stated goal being disclosure, which you've been pushing for now, I can't even think of the amount of years, but let's just say since the press club, let's go with 16 years. Is the push for disclosure to put pressure on Washington, or is it to continue the disclosure for the uninitiated, for the new people that would be coming to the table, the audience? What is the ultimate goal when it comes to disclosure on that side?
It's both. It's absolutely both.
Yeah, I can kind of see that, and I can kind of feel that coming. We'll take a break right here. I want to say at one point, and I can feel this coming, Stephen, we have so many different things coming at us in all directions. We have the fast radio bursts, we have the exoplanets, we have quantum theory and mechanics and parallel worlds and interdimensional possibilities that science right now is helping us out with. The hardcore guys. The dam is going to burst, and it's going to burst quickly. Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Dr. Stephen Greer. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with the good doctor right after this short break. Stay with us.